The silence before the storm. The galaxy had grown quiet after centuries of endless battles. Stars still burned, ships still crossed the void, but the wars had left scars across entire worlds. Great empires had fallen, new ones had risen, and the cycle of destruction seemed unending. In this silence, whispers of humanity still lingered, though the species itself had long been erased from the living stars. The fleets of the Dominion moved like shadows across the edge of the Orion Arm, searching for signs of resistance. The Dominion had crushed dozens of species, breaking their cities, burning their homes, and bending their survivors into servants. Yet there remained a ghost they could never fully erase, the memory of the humans. No one had seen them for over 300 years. Their homeworld was ash, their colonies shattered, their fleets scattered. To most, humanity was only a legend, an extinct people who had burned too brightly, fought too fiercely, and finally collapsed under the weight of endless war. But to the soldiers of the Dominion there was still fear. It was said that the last words of humanity echoed across captured channels, etched into ruined walls, and whispered in the final transmissions of dying captains. The cost of war will destroy you. Commanders dismissed it as superstition, but veterans remembered. They remembered how humans never surrendered. They remembered how a single human fleet could stand against impossible odds and leave nothing but wreckage in its path. And they remembered that even as humanity was being consumed, their enemies paid dearly for every inch of ground. On the world of Kalor, deep within Dominion territory, excavators unearthed a forgotten bunker. Beneath layers of dust and shattered stone, they found human script burned into metal walls. The letters were simple, but their meaning sent unease through the workers. If you are reading this, then war has touched you. And if war has touched you, then it will consume you. We warned the galaxy. You would not listen. The Dominion overseers laughed at the discovery. They declared the words nothing more than the whining of a dead species. But the soldiers whispered among themselves. And the whispers spread. Far across the stars, on the quiet frontier, a small alliance of free peoples remembered their own histories with humanity. They remembered trade ships bringing knowledge and tools. They remembered human captains fighting alongside them, not for conquest, but for survival. They remembered that though humanity had fallen, they had taught others how to resist. Now those memories returned like sparks in dry grass. The Dominion was strong, yes, but cracks were beginning to show. Its fleets were stretched thin, its soldiers restless, its people weary of endless campaigns. And in those cracks, the old words of humanity began to echo once more. A lone scholar in the archives of Eridan 5 uncovered a transmission that had never been decoded. It carried the voice of a human commander, his tone steady, though his fleet was dying around him. The message was short, almost broken by static, but clear enough to pierce through time. We are gone. But remember this, war is never free. It will cost you everything. It will strip away your victories, your people, your future. The cost of war will destroy you. The scholar sent this recording to the Alliance Council. Many dismissed it, but others felt the weight of the words. Humanity had known what was coming. They had seen that no empire, no matter how vast, could escape the consequences of endless war. Meanwhile, the Dominion leaders argued in their chambers. Some wanted to erase every human ruin, every memory, to stop the whispers from spreading. Others believed it was already too late, that the legend of humanity was stronger in death than it had ever been in life. Out in the frontier, young soldiers of the Alliance began to paint human words on their armor, carving them into their ships, whispering them in battle. It was not just memory anymore. It was warning. It was prophecy. And though humanity was gone, their last words lived on, carried not by human voices, but by all those who had once fought beside them. The silence before the storm was breaking. The first cracks, the Dominion believed itself eternal. Its fleets spread across thousands of systems. Its banners hung over broken capitals, and its leaders sat in towers of glass and steel. They declared themselves rulers of the stars, above all life, beyond all consequence. But even the strongest stone begins to fracture when pressure grows too heavy. At first, the cracks were small. On the mining world of Relor, workers refused to meet their quotas. When the overseers punished them, riots broke out. Soldiers fired into the crowd, but the riot only grew larger. On the distant colony of Duran, an entire regiment deserted, stealing a patrol ship and vanishing into the outer rim. The commanders told themselves these were accidents, mistakes, nothing to fear. Yet in the silence of their chambers, Some remembered the human warning. The cost of war will destroy you. Whispers moved faster than ships. Soldiers spoke of ghost fleets seen in the darkness, shapes that looked like human warships long gone but somehow still hunting. Others claimed to hear human voices in abandoned channels, repeating the same warning in languages no one had spoken for centuries. The Dominion tried to crush these rumors, but the more they denied, the stronger the fear became. On the frontier, the Alliance listened. Their fleets were small compared to the Dominion, their worlds weaker, their armies tired. Yet the stories of humanity gave them strength. Where once they had been scattered, now they began to unite. Small groups of fighters calling themselves Echoes rose from the shadows. They painted old human symbols on their ships and launched raids against Dominion convoys. Each raid was small, but each left behind a message carved into hulls or burned into stone. The cost of war will destroy you. To the Dominion, these words became a plague. Every time a ship was lost, every time a convoy burned, someone whispered the human warning. The words carried more weight than weapons. They spread not just through soldiers, but through citizens. Even the children of Dominion workers began to repeat them. The High Council met in secret. They argued in cold voices, their faces lit by star maps filled with red lines of conquest. Some demanded harsher control. More troops, more ships, more fear. Others said fear itself was the problem. We are bleeding ourselves dry, one counselor warned. We are at war with the galaxy. We are at war with the memory of the humans. And we are at war with ourselves. His words were struck from the record. But the silence in the chamber afterward spoke louder than any argument. Meanwhile, far from the halls of power, a simple soldier named Liran sat in the ruins of a burned village. His unit had been ordered to destroy it after a failed uprising. He watched the smoke rise, and in the ash he found a small metal plate, scorched and bent. On it were words carved in an ancient human tongue. He could not read it, but the translator in his helmet whispered the meaning. We warned you. The war you fight will not end. It will consume you. For the first time, Liran felt doubt. He looked at the broken houses, the lifeless streets, the hollow eyes of his own comrades. He wondered if the humans had been right. The Alliance, meanwhile, began gathering more fragments of human memory. Old data caches, forgotten recordings, etched words buried in ruins. Each piece added to the same story. Humanity had known the truth. They had fought wars not just against enemies, but against the very idea of endless war. And though they had fallen, their final message had become prophecy. The Dominion ignored these warnings and pushed further into the frontier. Their fleet struck with brutal strength, burning worlds that dared resist. Yet every victory felt smaller. Every new conquest cost more soldiers, more ships, more trust. The Empire was winning battles but losing the war against itself. On the moon of Kalor, where the first human words had been uncovered, another bunker was opened. Inside was a recording, faint but still alive. A human voice, calm yet heavy, spoke through the static. We are the last of our kind. If you hear this, then our time is gone. But remember, war is a fire. Feed it long enough and it will turn on those who lit it. When the Dominion governor heard this, he ordered the bunker destroyed. But soldiers who had listened to the recording carried it with them in their hearts. They whispered it in barracks, repeated it before battles, and passed it along until it spread like wildfire. The first cracks had opened, and through them the last words of humanity began to shine. The fire spreads. The Dominion was still vast, still powerful, but its strength was hollowing from within. The more it conquered, the more fragile it became. Every world demanded soldiers. Every battle drained resources. And every victory carried with it a shadow, the voice of humanity echoing across centuries. On the rim world of Deiros, the rebellion began with only a handful of farmers. They had no ships, no weapons beyond tools, but they had the human words. They carved them into their walls, painted them across burned fields, whispered them before charging against armed patrols. The Dominion laughed at first, calling them weak and foolish. But when soldiers marched to crush them, the rebels did not flee. They fought until the ground ran red, and though they lost, their message lived. Other villages rose in their place carrying the same warning. The cost of war will destroy you. The Dominion answered with fire. Whole settlements were burned. Entire populations were forced into camps. But still the word spread. For every rebel that fell, 2 more took their place. For every ship destroyed, another painted human symbols on its hull and returned to battle. The more the Dominion struck, the louder the whispers became. In the capital city of Veron Prime, ordinary citizens began to question their rulers. Why must their sons and daughters fight endless wars? Why must entire planets be reduced to ash for the glory of conquest? Why did the ghosts of humanity seem closer with every passing year? Murmurs of unrest filled the streets. Soldiers returning from the front carried stories of human ruins, of human recordings, of warnings that felt more real than the orders of their own leaders. The Dominion leaders called these stories lies. They declared humanity an evil race that had deserved extinction. They ordered propaganda to fill the networks, declaring that the Empire's rule was peace. But even the youngest children laughed at the words. They knew what peace looked like, and this was not peace. In the outer rim, the Alliance grew stronger. They had no great fleets, no endless armies, but they had purpose. The fragments of human memory gave them unity. They built hidden bases, trained pilots, smuggled supplies. They called themselves heirs of the last voices, vowing to keep the human warning alive. Among them was a commander named Erin, who stood before her fighters in a cold hangar lit by broken lamps. She raised her voice not with promises of victory, but with the words of humanity. We may fall, she told them, but if we do, let us fall as they did, leaving a message so sharp it cuts through time. Let the Dominion hear it in every battle, in every loss. Let them learn what the humans knew. War will consume them. Her fighters struck their armor with fists, repeating the words like a vow. The Dominion fought harder, sending more ships, more weapons, more fear. But fear was no longer enough. On Duran, soldiers mutinied, turning their guns on their commanders. On Relor, camps meant for prisoners were broken open by rebels armed only with stolen tools. And on Kalor, the world of the first bunker, Dominion troops refused in order to destroy another ruin. They had listened to the human voice inside it, and they would not silence it. The Empire began to fracture. The High Council still sat in towers, but their words carried less weight. Generals argued in war rooms, fleets failed to return from missions, and governors whispered of rebellion. The cost of war was rising higher with every day, yet still the Dominion pressed forward. They could not admit weakness. To stop now would be to show that humanity had been right, and so they fed the fire, hoping it would consume only others. But war is a hunger that does not choose its prey. In the void beyond the frontier, strange signals were detected. Old frequencies, long thought dead, carried fragments of human voices. No one knew if they were ghosts, echoes, or machines left behind. Some claimed the humans were not truly gone, that their fleets still drifted in hidden places waiting. Others said it did not matter, that the words themselves had become the true weapon, stronger than any fleet. In the quiet of night across burned worlds and silent ruins, the words repeated like a heartbeat. The cost of war will destroy you. And the Dominion began to tremble. The breaking point, the Dominion still claimed the galaxy, but its empire was bleeding. Worlds once loyal now rose in defiance. Fleets once unstoppable now returned broken or did not return at all. Every new campaign seemed to swallow more lives than it gained. And in every corner of its territory, the same words echoed louder and louder. The cost of war will destroy you. On the world of Veron Prime, the capital itself, protests erupted in the streets. Thousands of citizens shouted for food, for peace, for an end to endless battles. The Dominion sent soldiers to silence them, but the soldiers hesitated. Many of them had fought in ruined cities, had seen the words of humanity carved into walls, had carried friends in broken armor. Now, standing before their own people, they remembered the warning. Some lowered their weapons. Others turned them on their commanders. In the High Council chamber, panic grew. The councilors argued day and night, their voices sharp with fear. Some demanded even greater violence. If the people rise, burn their cities, one said. If the soldiers hesitate, execute them. Fear is stronger than doubt. Others shook their heads. They could see what the Empire was becoming, a monster that devoured itself. But no agreement was reached. They were too divided, too blind, too late. Far away on the frontier, the Alliance moved with growing confidence. Their fleets were still small, their soldiers still few, but the Dominion was weak now. Raids that once felt desperate now struck deep into enemy space. On Relor, rebels destroyed an entire Dominion garrison. On Duran, deserters joined the Alliance openly, bringing stolen ships with them. And on Kalor, the world of human ruins, the Dominion governor was overthrown by his own guards. Everywhere, the people spoke the human words. They no longer whispered. They shouted them in streets, painted them on walls, broadcast them on stolen channels. Even Dominion officers, hardened by years of war, found the words echoing in their minds. A soldier named Liran, who had once found a human plate in ash, now stood as a leader among rebels. He carried the plate with him, its burned words shining in the firelight. Before battles, he raised it high. The humans warned us, he told his fighters. They saw what we could not. And now their words are truth. This empire cannot last. We will be the proof, the Dominion responded with fury. They sent whole fleets to crush the Alliance. They burned villages, destroyed colonies, filled prisons until the air itself stank of despair. But each act of terror only sharpened the rebellion. Fear no longer worked. The people had already lost too much to be afraid. And in the shadows of space, something stranger began to happen. Old human beacons, long dead, flickered to life. Some said it was only failing machines. Others believed it was more, that humanity had left behind something greater than ruins. On forgotten frequencies, voices played once more. To those who find this, we are gone. But the truth remains. War is a blade without a hilt. Hold it long enough and you will bleed. The Dominion tried to block the signals. They shut down channels, destroyed transmitters, banned discussion, but they could not silence the galaxy itself. The words spread faster than light, faster than ships, carried not just by machines but by memory, by faith, by fire. The High Council grew desperate. They ordered a final campaign, one that would wipe out the Alliance in a storm of overwhelming force. Hundreds of ships gathered, the largest fleet in decades, but the Empire was crumbling from within. Supplies were short. Morale was weak. Whole crews deserted before the fleet even left dock. When the campaign began, it did not unite the Empire. It shattered it. On the first day, rebel cells struck supply lines. On the second, half a dozen Dominion ships defected mid-battle. By the third, entire worlds refused to send reinforcements. The Grand Fleet began to collapse not from enemy fire, but from its own weight. And above the chaos, across every channel, someone, no one knew who, broadcast the human warning once again. The voice was calm, steady, timeless. The cost of war will destroy you. The soldiers who heard it looked at their commanders and lowered their weapons. The citizens who heard it filled the streets with defiance, and the leaders who heard it realized the truth at last. They were not fighting rebels. They were fighting the ghost of humanity. The Dominion had reached its breaking point. The fire they had fed for centuries was turning back upon them. The last echo, the Dominion's Grand Fleet, once the terror of the stars, drifted in chaos. Mutinies spread from ship to ship, rebellions burned across 100 worlds, and governors who once ruled with iron fists now hid in fear of their own people. The empire that had declared itself eternal was collapsing in only a few short years. The Alliance pressed forward. They did not need to fight every battle, for the Dominion was already destroying itself. On the rim, captured Dominion soldiers laid down their arms without resistance. In the core, riots grew into revolutions, tearing down banners that had hung for centuries. Even the loyal generals could no longer control their forces. Everywhere, the words of humanity rang like a bell. The cost of war will destroy you. And so it was. On Kalor, where the first human bunkers had been uncovered, the people gathered in the ruins. A great hall was built among the broken stone, not for war but for memory. In its center, the human carvings were preserved, lit by torches and guarded not by soldiers but by the common people. Leaders of the new alliance stood there not in triumph but in silence. They knew the truth. Humanity had not only warned them, but had predicted the fate of every empire that fed endlessly on war. Liran, the soldier who once found a human plate in ash, placed it at the heart of the hall. Its burned words were simple but eternal. He stood before the crowd, his voice steady. The Dominion is broken, but let us not make the same mistake. Let us remember the price they paid, the price humanity paid, and the price we all nearly paid. War has a cost, and if we forget it, it will come for us too. His words carried weight because they were not his alone. They were the echo of humanity. Far across the galaxy, the last fragments of human technology flickered and died. Ancient beacons finally went silent. Abandoned warships drifted into the void, their metal bones swallowed by dust and time. Yet humanity's presence had never been stronger. They had become something more than flesh, more than fleets. They had become a lesson. The fall of the Dominion was not marked by a single battle, nor by a single victory. It was marked by exhaustion, by collapse, by the truth of the human warning. The empire that had devoured worlds found itself consumed. Its armies were gone, its people free. Its name spoken now only with bitterness. The alliance grew, not as conquerors, but as guardians. They swore to remember the humans, not as ghosts of a lost race, but as teachers who had given their final gift. The truth that war destroys not only the enemy, but the one who wages it. Across new colonies and rebuilt cities, the human words were carved into stone, taught to children, whispered in prayers. The cost of war will destroy you. The galaxy changed. Trade replaced conquest. Councils replaced empires. Not everywhere, not all at once, but the memory of humanity was stronger than any weapon. Those who sought war were reminded of their fate. Those who sought peace found courage in the human example. And so even in death, humanity guided the stars. But in the silence of deep space, some still wondered. Were the humans truly gone? Or had they left something more than ruins and words? There were whispers of hidden fleets, of colonies beyond known space, of voices that sometimes still called through static. Some believed humanity might return one day. Others said they already had, through their warning, through their sacrifice, through the fire they left behind. On a quiet night above Kalor, a child asked her elder, "Why do we remember the humans? They are gone." The elder looked at the stars and answered softly, "Because even in their last breath they gave us life. They taught us what we refuse to see, and that is why they will never truly be gone." The child repeated the words, not fully understanding, but knowing they mattered. The cost of war will destroy you. The words drifted into the night, carried on winds and across stars. They were no longer just human. They belonged to the galaxy now, etched into the memory of every world, every people, every future. And so the humans, though absent, lived forever, in the last echo of their warning, in the last lesson of their war, and in the truth that outlasted empires. The galaxy would not forget.